Hi, and welcome to Samarpan podcast number 2. And I'm really grateful to have two very well-recognised professionals from the treatment field here with me today. It's Don and Meena Lavender from Camino Recovery Centre in Spain, in Malaga. A fantastic program that they have there in Spain. It's been open for how many years is it now? 15 years. So we're going to have a chance to have a chat about sort of treatment approaches, and hopefully we're going to learn a few new things here for our followers. So do you want to introduce yourself?
Well, my name is Don Lavender, the director of the program at Camino Recovery in Spain.
I'm Meena Lavender, and I enjoy working as a family therapist as well as a trauma therapist.
Okay. Right, fantastic. So, I mean, one of the things I'm going to ask, which, and we've talked a little bit about this morning, but we was talking about the family, and I think given that we're in India, where family is an extremely sort of pertinent part of the treatment journey for our clients, and families are very much involved in that process. I'd be really interested to sort of hear sort of a little bit about the work that you do with family, and really some of the struggles that families often have with their loved ones, especially the ones that are obviously struggling with addiction prior to coming into treatment, and then once they come into treatment.
Well, I'll ramble and you stop me.
I can do that.
It's again, in the mid-1950s, the American Medical Association identified alcoholism as a disease rather than a matter of willpower. The World Health Organization followed them about 4 months later, saying, not only is it a disease, it is a family disease. And so families need assistance and help. And what families can easily do is they can recognize one person that has issues, and they often send them off to rehabs. But the families need assistance. The families need help as well. And what happens is resentments build, they shut themselves down in communication, they close themselves off to experience healing or proper communication. And one of the things that we try to do is give them a workshop that allows them to experience healing. It has the potential of experiencing healing. It opens lines of communication. Family members, they learn to confront each other without blame or judgment, and also learn to look at the positives of each other. It's a difficult process. Our program is a week long. We have tried to do it in a shorter amount of time, but people have a tendency to move pretty quickly intellectually, but they have a tendency to move a bit slowly emotionally. So it takes some time for them to emotionally move through the process effectively.
Just on that, and I mean, that's talking about the part where once the client comes into treatment, or maybe at the point where they sort of are agreeable, but what do you find that families struggle with initially with maybe getting their loved one into treatment, or what do you see that sort of is problematic? Like, we see a lot of issues here where families struggle to be assertive with their loved one, or to sort of push them into maybe seeking help, and they continue repeating sort of past experiences that don't really resolve it. So what do you see as the big issues?
It's difficult to get family members to attend a family week program. They are often happy to put their family member that's a client with us into rehab, but when we contact them and say, come and attend the family week program, they are often, no, we're up to here, we're finished, we're done. And it takes some convincing that this will be an opportunity to heal. Because often they're done. I mean, they are at wit's end.
Yes.
And it's difficult. It's tricky to do. But we leave that to the family therapist to, get on the phone with the family members and say, come, help them.
What would you say? What is some of the work that you do with the family, and what's really helpful for the family? Because most families don't really know what to do they?
They just want to speak to someone who understands their plight
Yes.
And just have somebody listen. I think that really helps them to decompress and understand that there is going to be some help, but they are going to be part of that.
Yes.
Unless they take part, it's going to be repeated. So that's the key for them to understand that.
For a family member that may have a loved one that is still active in their addiction and they don't know what to do, I mean, from your years of experience, both of you, I mean, you're vastly experienced in this field, what would be some of the things that you would maybe suggest would be helpful for a family, you know, considering that they want to help their loved one, but they're not necessarily interested in having help?
So we have had family members come and attend the workshops on their own, without their loved one who's in addictions. And that helps them enormously when they go back and not to enable.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the time, because families care, they enable. They don't realise that's what they're doing.
And you often recommend to them things they can do to self-care.
That's right.
Could you maybe, for some of the people that may be watching this, and people will hear the word enable and codependency and the like, could you maybe give some sort of examples about how families may sort of enable their loved one? Maybe, you know, what would be some of the things that they maybe would be helpful for them to be aware of?
So one of the things that we find were the family members who has been in active addiction continue manipulating the whole family systems, where unless you give me so much money, I'm going to continue, you know, I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that. That will stop once they get the education. And that's part of the enabling.
Yes.
That will continue unless they stop. So we do a lot of education information around this, where they can stop, and they may threaten for certain things they're going to do, but it never happens, you know, because they know that their source is going to stop.
Yes.
Well, the person that's active in addiction, with a bit of treatment, they can develop some emotional regulation.
Yes.
So that they've got some tools to use so that they don't go off the rails when the family stop the enabling. They know that it's coming.
Yes.
They're given that information, and they're also taught these are the things that you can do when this occurs, because it's going to happen. The family will reach the end of their tether and they're going to say no longer, and these are the things you can do for self-care. It's got to work in tandem.
I guess sort of one of the things that I've noticed here is, you know, we're in India, so probably working in Europe and working with American clientele as well. I think obviously you've got a lot of experience in working in treatment services in the US and also the UK. What do you think might be some of the differences from a sort of a cultural aspect and that might be a little bit different over there, and what maybe that we sort of miss out on here?
Well, I mean, the thing that's interesting is the cultural differences. You know, Americans have a tendency to go, you know, how am I going to say anything that's not going to sound insulting culturally? But Americans do have a tendency, they will engage emotionally immediately. The English, for example, you better sell it to them intellectually first before they buy it emotionally.
Yes.
But, you know, you can even say, you know, here in India, globally, what is important? What is of value? Family. And so if you can engage people on the level of family to work with them and help the families heal, it's effective, it works. That's the language that translates across the board.
From something that I've sort of experienced since I've been here in India, and often I get clients that come in and say, well, I don't want to sort of work in a group and I only want to work with a therapist, and that's, you know, I'm going to take everything to my therapist. what would you say is the importance around about group therapy? And because I think maybe there's something in this whole group therapy process that's helpful to translate when they sort of are with the family as well. You know, the whole idea of it maybe being, you know, the communication styles and the like. So what would you say to people that might be struggling, saying, I'm not going to do therapy in a group, I can only do it with one person?
Oh, I like this point, because this education needs to be given to both the client, the family, as well as therapists that refer them. As if I'm dealing with or working with a therapist, if I'm clever enough, and if addicts are anything, they are clever.
Yeah.
I can manipulate and control. But if I'm sitting in a room full of addicts, just like myself, I'm not going to be able to manipulate and control them. And these people that are in the group with me in any rehab, they may never see me again, ever, when I leave. So they have no investment of me being their friend or them being my friend. They will confront me. That is why group therapy is the most effective kind of therapy for addictions across the board for the largest number of people.
Yes.
And do addicts dislike it? Oh yeah. Do they want to do individual therapy? Say, oh yes. But again, there's plenty of places that'll be happy to do that or accommodate you, but it may not be the best therapy or the best product for you.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes people say to me, oh, well, it's too much work, you know, you do, 3-4 groups a day, and where's all the individual work? You only see a client for, 2 individual sessions a week. Is that really enough? I thought that I would have more individual time. I mean, what would you, from a therapist perspective, if you were sort of maybe talking to maybe therapists that also sort of are not aware of this whole idea?
I say, do all the private practice individual therapy you want before you go to rehab, and do all the private practice individual therapy you want to do after rehab.
Yeah.
But while you're in rehab, whether it's 1, 2, 3 months, do the group. Sit in group.
We're talking about 1 month, 2 month, 3 month. I'm going to have to ask this question as well, because that's something that often crops up. Is I get people say, I would like to come into rehab, I'd like to come in for a week, or I'd like to come in, I don't want to do that part of the program, I'd only like to do maybe just 2 weeks, and I don't want to necessarily do groups, but I'll do individual. What do you sort of, in terms of your experience, which is vast, much more than mine as well. So what do you say about, lengths of stay in treatment, sort of treatment modalities? What do you find from your experience has been helpful? You can talk about your model in a moment, but just in general for substance use disorders.
Well, you can talk about what's effective, what's not. You can talk about when managed care created this dictum of 30 days, when a longer period of stay may be more beneficial. Everyone is different, but I think it's in looking at the individual and their needs. If you look at the emotional regulation that somebody can develop while in treatment, it's probably going to be happening in 2 or 3 months rather than in 30 days.
Yes.
And again, that 30-day, I'll get in trouble for this.
Please.
But, I was in the business in the late 70s, early 80s, when managed care in the United States was dictating a 30-day treatment program, when in other parts of the world, they were going 3 months, 4 months.
Yes.
Why? Because that length of stay was effective.
Yes.
And the managed care dictum was, it'll cost the company less that's paying for the care if it's only a month or fewer days. And it's not always effective. I mean, one of our staff members, actually, he was in rehab for 11 months. And of course, the odds are, some get it and some don't. So.
Yeah.
But the longer the length of stay, the more effective the care. We've got, at Camino, for example, our average length of stay is probably about 6 or 7 weeks. But those that have done 90 days with us,
Yes.
it's a very successful recovery rate. And treatment centers that say, oh, we have a high success rate. No, if you're just doing 30 days with people, 50% is going to be about your success rate. Ours is really high with those that do 90 days.
Well, I mean, success rate, a lot of people talk about success, and there's different ways of measuring success and outcomes and things like that. And what I was taken aback when I first got here was that one of the first comments that was made to me was, well, the only way that you can measure success is on the fact of whether someone is sober or not after they've left treatment after 6 months. What is your sort of take? I mean, I've got sort of, for me, I think we do ourselves a bit of a disservice if we just focus on one outcome. I think there's other sort of outcomes. Not everyone is going to be coming into treatment with the same issues or the same degree of stuff. So, I mean, what would you look at as in terms of outcomes and sort of like success?
Well, I mean, some people, they leave rehab and they fall off the wagon, and then they get back to a program.
Yes.
And if they've got the tools, then they can do well. Again, everybody's different, but if you can reach that point of emotional regulation, you can effectively make use of the tools that are given to you for recovery.
Yes.
Again, everyone is different. But the thing that's difficult is, you mentioned before, people will contact your center. Oh, I want to come in for a week or 10 days.
Yes.
And it's difficult. People do not want to hear that whatever's going on in your life, you didn't get there in 7 to 10 days.
Yeah.
So it's going to take a while to reach that recovery point.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. I mean, funny enough, I've just come out of a therapy session, and my client said to me, he said, I really recognise now why I stayed 12 weeks, because, realistically, I've been doing this stuff for such a long period of time that to expect to sort of be able to address some of my dysfunctional behaviours in 4 weeks is really difficult. And he said, and I'm still doing stuff that's not necessarily helpful, but it's a lot less. So I mean, what do you tend to see with people as they, 1 month, 2 month, 3 month? What do you sort of see changes for people?
Well, I mean, change occurs. It's up to the individual, but it's an excellent point when you're meeting with somebody and saying, now I understand why I did 12 weeks and how it's benefited me. It's if you want to find a good center, find a center that actually listens to its clients, because they will tell you not only, well, they'll tell you what they want, but they will also communicate clearly what they needed. They don't always know it until the end product.
Yes.
But you're running a good center when their clients are telling you, now I understand what you were talking about. Now I understand why you recommended that I do a few extra days.
Yes.
I would personally say 3 months. I'd like to make it 3 months. Most clients won't take that.
The idea of 3 months straight up at the bat is too.
Right at the front.
Yeah. I mean, interestingly, and I've been sort of like having discussions over with some of my colleagues. Do we sort of change our program a little bit? Maybe we add an extra week. Go from 4 week to maybe 5 week initially, just as a start. I don't know. I've got experience of doing that previously, and there was definitely some benefit to even just that extra week for people. And a lot of people would do 5 and then extend anyway. One of the things that I've found, I don't know for you, is that often people phone me, family members say, well, how long are they going to need to be in treatment? I tend to say I have no idea at this point.
Exactly.
And because I don't know the client enough to give you that opinion, well, and then I get, well, the treatment centre down the road told me that they need to be in treatment for 6 months. And I said, well, I mean, what's your take on this? Because I then get accused of sometimes, and it's quite interesting, is when we get to the second week or the third week and we start making, we give them some clinical reasons as to why you need to extend, or you only want to keep us in treatment.
Well, the thing, a good question, and not everybody's asking that question, families are.
Yeah.
In our client handbook, it's specific. These are the things that we expect you to accomplish.
Yes.
This is what we would want you to do while in rehab that tells us you're ready to leave. I mean, emotional regulation is just one of those things.
Yes.
And I'll get in trouble for this again.
Please.
We have actually had some clients that wanted to stay longer, and we told them, we said, you're done. You have actually done the work that we've asked you to do.
Yes.
You're ready to go. And some of them are just scared, I don't want to.
Of course.
But, when they're ready, we tell them. And we evaluate, just like any good center, you evaluate on a daily basis where people are.
Yeah, I mean, I've had clients where I've sort of said, I think we've gone as far as we can, and the family is saying, can you keep them for another couple of months?
Yeah.
It's like, well, no, I mean, I sometimes get a family say, I had one last week, and they said, well, Martin, I want them there for 6 months. And I said, well, I can't keep someone for 6 months with no real justification. We need to understand, firstly, how long they need and how they progress. They might not fit our program per se. It might not be the right program for them.
Yeah, they may.
Yeah.
They may do well, and at the end of a certain period of time, they're saturated with what the center can offer.
Yes.
They're saturated with what the group they're working with can offer them.
Yeah.
And it's good to know that, and to move them on if that's what they need.
Yeah, I mean, in India, and I think maybe in Spain, we don't really have sort of like sober living or transitional living here in India. What do you see as the benefits of that? I mean, I think we did talk a little bit briefly this morning, didn't we? We did talk about,
So we tend to send our clients to a secondary place in London.
Yes.
But ideally it would be good if we had some in Spain or more resources.
Yes.
We need to explore that.
So Spain's a little bit like India in that way, where it doesn't necessarily have that sort of transitional, that secondary care, which would be great. I mean, we have an outpatient program. It's not at the level of the services, or they don't have the sober living places like Indonesia, South Africa, US. Yeah.
See, but the thing is your center here in India, you might not recognize it right away, but it will influence the people that come to you and work here, and the kind of education that they receive in their furthering education. And these people may branch off and do, outside of or in major cities,
Yes.
some aftercare programs. It just may evolve.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope so. I mean, we've been quite limited so far in a lot of our scope of our clients has been people from sort of Mumbai. I mean, we do get clients from other cities, and we have had, we're starting to get more people from overseas. But I would, it'd be cool if we start to have more outpatient, follow-ups in other cities in India as well, which may, given time.
Even if you contracted a therapist in Mumbai to do an aftercare group once a week, I bet it would evolve.
Yeah, I mean, we have that in Mumbai with the Mumbai team, so we've got all of that there. We have an IOP program as well, which is sort of three days a week for people that aren't necessarily able to come into residential. But that's quite a new concept here.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, it's a very new concept. So that's I think people are still very much focused on residential. It has to be residential treatment, or there's not so much of the understanding the levels of care. Do you want to maybe talk about levels of care you come from the US, and they have the whole part around about the varying Assam levels of care. What would you?
Well, the levels of care can be anything from, initial assessment and evaluation to detox protocols to treatment programs to aftercare programs, to family involvement. I mean, it can be anything. And it's whatever you're doing to develop the needs of the community you serve. And there's different things. Treatment centers have developed levels of care to rationalize extended care that insurance companies are paying for. They would do it to more appropriately identify the specific needs of clients. But it can all be different for different reasons. But at the same time, if you can identify levels of care, then not only the people that need the service understand it a bit better, as well as the people that are paying for the service understand it a bit better. It clearly identifies this, the work that's done, rather than just, stay with me for 6 months.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Was that clear as mud?
Well, yeah, I think so, because I think sometimes there's that part about, they need to be, they need to go to a treatment centre and they need to be there for 6 months, but there's no real reason.
But you talked about your team in Mumbai.
Yes.
They have an IOP, intensive outpatient.
Yes.
And if, that can help a certain percentage, but
Absolutely.
some people, it's not enough. And
Correct.
so if it's not enough, then they need something more.
Yes.
Or they need something else. And that's when they go to the next level or the next stage of care. But, you gotta try and see what works.
Yeah, exactly. I've got to ask this question, because I know one of the things that you do at Camino, and I'm not really aware of anywhere that's really doing it in India, per se, is the equine assisted therapy. And you've written a book as well on this.
Oh, it's an amazing, fascinating work. Well, the thing is, I wrote the book, and it's entitled Equine Utilized Psychotherapy, because when I was getting it published, I didn't know if equine assisted psychotherapy was in the public domain. It is.
Yes.
But it's just teaching people, just like creative writing therapy, just like art therapy, just like other kinds and types of therapy, are a way for people to articulate issues that they cannot otherwise articulate. Equine assisted psychotherapy is a way for people to understand their own emotional growth, their own personal boundaries or lack of boundaries, their own relational dynamics, a way to get in touch with their own personal emotional state, dealing with another. Of course, this other happens to be an animal. And people have a tendency to project all kind of stuff onto the horse. Oh, the horse doesn't like me. No, it's a horse.
Horses have perfect boundaries. So if they find your emotional state is not regulated, they would simply move away from it.
Okay, that's fascinating.
Yeah, it is very fascinating.
The thing, one of the interesting things I've learned over the years doing the process with horses, it's not so much that horses are connected to other people. I mean, they are herd animals,
yes,
and humans are social as well.
Of course.
But horses are connected to creatures that are connected to self. That's why horses are really good with kids, or I should say, that's why kids are really good with horses,
yep,
and adults not so much. Again, it teaches adults and people how to emotionally connect with self, identify more clearly what their emotional state is, what's going on, because I guarantee horses will reflect your emotional state, whether you know what it is or not. And, well, I was going to go off on a tangent.
Please.
Well, the thing that's interesting, it's like when if you're doing family therapy, for example, which is, our family program is not family therapy, it's family communications workshop. Yeah. But family therapy, it's most of the time, not often, every time, you sit down with mom and dad and you're talking about what are the issues in the family, what's going on. And the one child or two children, little kids, they're playing over in the sandbox with the toys and stuff. In less than 10 minutes, the child will act out the family dysfunction. Not most of the time, every time. It's kind of like, excuse me, with the use of horses, the horse will assist in acting out the human's dysfunction, whether they recognize it or not. And what the therapist gets to do is we get to look at the horse to identify what's going on with the person. And the person just being amazed, like, how did you know that? I said, I'm watching the horse.
So just for those that probably maybe don't know too much about equine assisted therapy, and what sort of exercises do people, they don't get on the horse, as you told us, as you was telling me, you know, the days where the insurance company said that's definitely a no-no.
Yeah.
So, you know, what sort of things would one do with a horse in the process of the equine assisted therapy?
Well, there's a number of activities that are done which we call join up.
Yep.
And the thing is I'm not going to be able to join up very well with another person if I don't have join up or connection or knowledge of self.
Yes.
And these join up activities can be putting a rope, a halter on the horse, leading the horse around with the rope, continuing to lead the horse around without the rope, learning to lunge the horse around a round pen at liberty, which means you're not connected with a rope or anything. And so join up can be done in a myriad of ways, and it's about emotional connection. What people have a tendency to do, excuse me, is, people, they think really well, because intellectualizing is something that people do. And but emotional connection, not so much. They don't do it. And a lot of equine assisted psychotherapy is an emotional practice. It's an emotional connection. It's emotional join up. And it's not so much with the horse, it's with self. Because if I can become authentic, a good example is if I'm full of bull and the horse knows it, nobody else knows it, but I can't get the horse to do a single thing. I can't connect. But if I get emotionally honest, the horse is right there.
So the horse, if you're full of bull, and I'm not going to use the full phrase, but
yeah.
The horse will just stand there.
Yeah.
And just
or wander off.
Yeah.
And as soon as we start to get real, honest with self, the horse will come.
Okay, it's fascinating, really.
It's magical. I call it magical.
Well, it's magical, but even the people that are involved in it, they're shocked. How did this happen? And we have to say, well, you did this. Can you remember how to do it again? So we teach them.
It's pretty amazing. I just recall from my early days of when I was working sort of and training as a nurse and my first experiences of working with people with children with learning disabilities, and there was a lot of stuff around about animal assisted, and they did do sort of, equestrian. I think the whole thing has moved on, because this is like 33 years ago for me, when I sort of, but we taking the kids out and they would get this sort of connection with an animal, which was pretty amazing, especially because a lot of these children were non-communicative.
Yeah.
So there was this, all of a sudden, there was this communication thing going on between a kid and an animal. So it's really interesting about what you say, particularly around horses with boundaries, because most of our clients don't have good boundaries, do they?
Yeah. Well, the thing is and what I can do as a person, I can say, well, these children, they're not very good at communicating. Actually, they're perfect.
Yes.
And it's, they're not communicating on the level that I think I'm comfortable with them. But horses there's no latency with them. There's no stop-start communication in talking or even emotional dialogue. The horse is non-stop, give and take. And these children that may be handicapped,
Yes.
they are non-stop in communicating, and the horse is there.
Fantastic. Now, I mean, there's another part of, and I'm mindful of the time, so I'm not going to, go on and stuff. But there's another part of the program that you do a lot of work in, which is the trauma, and you use EMDR and trauma therapy. Do you want to sort of maybe talk a little bit about that? It's the big buzzword now in treatment services. Everyone is saying that they're trauma informed, that they're trauma this, they're trauma that. Can you maybe talk a little bit about some of the stuff that you do and some of the changes that both of you have noticed in, treatment as it's sort of evolved in the last, I think probably in the last sort of 15 years, it's been quite rapid changes.
Yeah.
For the last 15 years, we haven't really changed our program. We have always done EMDR as well as equine therapy. So new word for us, trauma informed, is recent, but we've been doing it for 15 years. EMDR is type of therapy that moves with eye movement. And if you've heard of REM sleep, it works very similar to that. And we find that working with trauma clients, EMDR as well as equine goes hand in hand, because it's done by emotional state, done by connection, heart connection, and not think connection.
Well, and the kind and type of trauma resolution that's done with the equine work it's more along the lines of somatic experiencing, where people do this internal check-in about what's going on, where, and how it affects me. The EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, even Shapiro, who developed it, said it's probably a bad name because it's bilateral stimulation. And it does not make trauma vanish or go away. What it does is it takes the emotional charge out of the experiences for people so that they can just move on with life and get on with things rather than stay stuck in that place.
Okay. Fantastic.
And it's, Gorski was the one I think that woke up a lot of Americans by saying, relapse is a problem. What's the biggest contributor to relapse? Stress. What's one of the biggest contributors to stress? Unaddressed trauma. And he said, go to work on that stuff. And so that's what we do.
I mean, the Gorski model's been around sort of since the early 80s, isn't it? If I'm not mistaken, and it's evolved, and I mean, it's still relevant even to this day. And here we use the Gorski model for the Gorski CNATS model for our relapse prevention. With our clients, and what's your experience of that model? I'm sure you've.
It's effective. It works.
Used it.
Yeah.
It's like, what works, keep it.
Sometimes you don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I mean, just to wrap up, this is your first time visiting Samarpan. What's it like? Just so, I mean, you've come in and had a look around and sort of met some of the staff and the facilities. What's your take?
I'll start. Initial impression, I was, we came in late at night, we rolled in.
Oh, that was a story as well, wasn't it?
The guard at the gate signed this confidentiality statement. I said, well, at least these guys know what they're doing. They're keeping it a safe place. But it's not only that, it has a really good feel to it. Now, I know that sounds woo-woo, but it's got a nice energy to it. And not only do the clients make that happen, the staff make that happen. The staff are, they're young, they're educated, they're enthusiastic, they're professional, but they still want to learn. And they're keen to do it. And it just seems like it's a solid place. And wherever you judge yourself to be, it looks like it's on good footing. So, I don't know what.
No, I agree. I think you may be one of the first ones to have this model in India, because I've not known anyone do this European model.
Yeah, I think probably, we are probably the only one with this model. I think other programs may have aspects of what we do, but the sort of the joined uppedness and some of the things that we do here won't be in other programs because there's certain things that myself and Obi in particular, we've come from a different model and we have experience of delivering those things. So yeah, I think I'd like to think that and just to wrap up, maybe you just want to just say something about Camino as well, and just because for people, because just maybe talk a little bit about Camino and how many clients you take, and just a little bit about that, just so that anyone because it's a fantastic program. It's very niche, in my opinion. It's very niche, a niche program, small numbers.
Yeah, we are small, 8-bed, family-run business. So we're more, I say business, we're more geared to serve the clients than be a business. Yeah. We have a team of 15 staff, 4 of family members, and
we do a Hazelden 12-step approach, and depending upon, sometimes we will have a full house and not a single client is dealing with substance abuse or misuse. Okay. Everyone is dealing with depression, anxiety, trauma. Okay. And so then the 12-step approach becomes maybe only 4 or 5% of what we do. So we adjust it per the client's needs. And again, we do the equine assisted psychotherapy, the trauma resolution, the family systems work, the creative writing, the art therapy, yoga meditation.
Yeah, just on that, that 12-step, my take is that you don't necessarily have to have a substance abuse issue to be 12-step. It's just guidelines for good living.
Yeah, well, there are people that come to us with all sort of behavioral issues.
Yes.
Not substance.
Yes.
And a 12-step approach is something that, when they leave rehab, it's the right price. It doesn't cost anything to go to a meeting.
It's free.
And to get help with a sponsor.
Yes.
And there's all kind of stuff out there that, behavioral addictions that, need to be addressed. And it's interesting, some countries, they frown on it and say, oh, that's not an issue. Oh, yes, it is.
Yeah.
So, and again, we take people individually where they are and look at their issues. So.
Okay, well, I've asked loads of questions. I'm really grateful for your time. I'm really pleased that you're here. It's great to have 2 professionals from overseas visiting. You're here for our alumni day tomorrow as well, which should be.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, thanks for inviting us.
Yeah, it was an epic journey from Goa to here as well yesterday, wasn't it? So.
1 hour flight took us 12 hours.
It was quicker to get from Spain to India than it was from Goa to Pune, yeah? Okay, well, thank you very much, and thank you, and that's the end of our second podcast, and join us for our next one, probably coming in another few weeks' time. Thank you.